Hi everyone, welcome to the Majlis. My name is Yasmin Khayter, and with me today I have Ragad Al-Nasser. Ragad, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, Ragad is the CIO of Jabal Ahad Holding, as well as the CEO of Wealth Management Company, and she is obviously an investment expert. So really excited to talk with her today about investing for personal wealth management. And perhaps to start us off on that, you can tell us a little bit about what you do with Wealth Management Company.
Great. Jabal Uhud.
Sorry.
No worries. Um, can you repeat again the question?
What you do in the investment space specifically with Wealth Management Company that
Okay,
sort of
great. So
positions you.
wealth management company, I founded this company basically to manage the family's wealth and the endowment of Abdulaziz Al-Nasser. So we decided to make one place where we can manage all sort of funds for the family. And now it's growing and expanding to manage other people's fund, which basically sometimes not even manage, gives people advice on what to do, how to do it, how to invest, how to go through building a portfolio, which is the best mix of assets for you, the specific asset allocation that you would like, your risk tolerance. So, in a nutshell, this is what the company does. And I hope to expand it to serve as many clients as possible.
And that's great because that's exactly what we want to talk about today, right? Is sort of individual investing.
Yeah.
And what we've seen in the GCC and in Saudi as well specifically is a very low investment and savings culture, right? So in 2018, 80% of Saudis didn't invest, and only 40 something percent were saving, right? And currently the investing rate is less than 2% of income, and we want to in Vision 2030 get that up to 10%, right? So it's an ambitious goal, and there's a lot to do here in terms of changing the culture around saving and investing. We have a huge consumer culture today, which obviously, there's targeted education that can help solve that. There's changes of mindsets as the new generation comes up. But let's say, for our viewers today who are interested in becoming investors, who want to do more with their money actively, what advice do you have for them?
Well, for anyone new to investing, I would recommend first to not be afraid. The term investing just got a lot of people afraid, like, what am I going to do? I hear a lot of new terminology that I'm not aware of. So just take it step by step. It's easy. It's easy for anyone to make money nowadays. The level of information that we have nowadays, or just Googling, you can get all the information. So, especially in Saudi, I would recommend first thing not to listen to anyone, not to listen to any recommendation that you heard from your cousin or your friend that you trust. You might trust them, but they don't know maybe investing. So, I would tell you to read. And to read, there's one book that I'm particularly in love with, which is The Intelligent Investors, which about by Benjamin Graham, that tells you everything you need to know about investing in terms of which asset class, whether equity, bonds, ETFs, everything, the level of risk, the level of reward that you would like. And it just really takes a person from a zero level knowledge of investing to a level of, I would say, a mature investor. Obviously, that takes a lot of practice, but people get afraid by just starting. So I would recommend as well you start with a small amount. Don't start with a big amount. Just test the waters. And I wouldn't recommend starting like alone, like by single line equities. No, start by ETFs, which an ETF is a group of companies that gives you exposure, and it also reduces your risk. So you can measure your return with the whole market. You can't beat the market. And I see a lot of people getting really, I don't know, optimistic or adventurous and say, I'm going to put all my money in this stock. This stock is going to go up. And I'm like, no, it might not go up. So why do that? Why don't you just have that peace of mind, putting your funds in an ETF and then just riding the wave? And sometimes it's like the best thing is to do nothing. And I tell people this all the time, just sleep on it. You don't have to react to every market news that something happened in the market that you should sell. No, sometimes if you just hold on and just invest and think long term, I think any investor would be able to make money on this like few principles, which is read, start small, be disciplined, have like emotional discipline. This is like the main thing that I would tell anyone to start investing. Don't be reactive on every single news that you hear. It might not even affect your portfolio. And in that way, like don't think 6 to 12 months. Think like 1 year, 5 year, 10 years. What do you want? If you're thinking you want just like a quick buck, then investing is not the place for you. You needs a lot of, I would say, composure and holding for the long term.
I see. And I think a lot of people do have this perception of the market as almost like this creature that's alive and reacts to things weirdly, and it can feel a bit opaque at times, I think, for like especially new investors when they're like, oh, I can outsmart the market, or I can short this.
Yeah.
But in your experience, obviously that's not the way to go with things.
Yeah, you can never time the market. I know some people do make it, but it takes like a really good manager and it takes years of experience. And why go through that? Like my approach, I follow the Warren Buffett approach, which is like I invest in ETFs. If I go single line equity, I must have a very strong conviction in that stock. I must be able to know their revenues, their earnings, their projection of revenues. And having talks with the management, with the board, to have an in-depth knowledge of the company in and out, not just what you get on public records. So I don't think that's available for individual investors. We do have that because we're institutional investors, so we can get that access. But for individual investors, just let someone else do that heavy lifting for you. Go through an ETF. There's tons of funds through the banks, like Rajhi, small medium enterprise for companies that did brilliantly this year, did I think over 20%. So for an individual, if you invest, let's say 1,000 in that fund, you're going to get 20% in that fund without doing anything. There's like a small subscription fee, and that's about it. I would recommend in like normal individuals who don't want to have to go through funds. As well, I wouldn't recommend saving. I'm against saving because like if you save right now, let's say you put your money in the bank and you get a deposit, it's a 5%. But if you invest it and like 2 months, you can make 15%. And I have a real life example of that, which is NVIDIA. NVIDIA did like 15% in the last 2 months. Everyone keeps on betting on this stock to stop, and it just keeps on going up. Obviously, this is a rare example. Yeah. And I wouldn't recommend individual investors, but this is just an example of what investing in equities or real estate or anything that could give you more return than just simply saving it for a short duration, than just go spending it on a purchase or spending it on a car or spending on a house. You need to have in your portfolio or in your life like assets that yield you profit, that gives you money while you're sleeping. So this is why I would recommend everyone basically to invest,
right,
and reduce
to create actual passive income instead of the 2-3% you're getting on your savings account, especially now that interest rates are projected to lower, right? Yes. And I mean, we're speaking now of unique examples in the stock market, but a lot of the examples you're giving and the advice you're giving is very classic. It's it hasn't changed a lot in the past couple of years, even though we've had a lot of new disruptions to the market. So you have new asset classes emerging, you have new tools and technologies emerging. What do you think of these? Are there any of them that you're particularly bullish or bearish on? Do you think that we should adjust the way we do investing with these new technologies, or are we should we stick to the way we've always done things?
Well, I think technology is a great advancement of mankind, like where we are right now in the level of technology. This is a disruptive, especially AI. AI created a new sort of investment vehicles that weren't available 10 years ago. With AI help right now, you don't need to go through a brokerage. You don't need to go through a manager. You don't need to go through an analyst. You can just have an AI to analyze all sorts of stock all around the world, see the most bought stock, the most sold stock, the most high conviction stocks, and pick it for you and put in a portfolio, and manages that portfolio and sell and hold that stock depending on the level of sentiment in the market. And as well, it reduces your costs there because obviously you don't have any human interaction, so you're not going to pay the same fees that you would pay for a fund managed by humans. I love that. I couldn't believe that thing existed, and I searched the performance, and the performance outbeated the human portfolio by 0.2, 0 point something, minimal, but it's still something. But in the same time, it's not that all amazing because it acts on momentum.
Mhm.
It doesn't take in the long-term factor that you want for, like, you might have a strong conviction in a stock and you want to keep it. And it's
Yeah.
not going to do great this year, but it's going to do amazing then the second year. AI won't take advantage of that. But obviously there's new ways and technologies right now that you can measure or I would say like put your classifications or put your time horizon that you would want. But all of that wasn't available before. Before, if you wanted to go through an asset, you would have, or to know more about an asset, let's say about a land, you would have to go and physically maybe value it, or physically go stand on the land to see
Mhm.
what's the properties of it. Or a stock as well, you would have to go through the company's financial projections. Right now with technology, you don't have to do that. In a click of a button, you can get everything that have ever been written on that stock, everything that have the last purchases, the last trades, the sentiment, everything. So it just reduces a lot of time and make it very effective and very efficient to trade. Not as before, not like
Mhm.
before, I would say.
Interesting. And when we think about balancing our portfolio
Mm.
as an individual investor, how do you recommend we go about that in terms of assets, in terms of levels of risk?
I really like the Ray Dalio method, which is the balanced portfolio that would pay you whether there's a depression, where there's a recession, where there's a high inflation, a low inflation, growth in the economy, that portfolio would still
Mhm.
keep on paying you. So I would recommend people to think about it in two ways. Like, you need a stable portfolio. A stable portfolio would have high dividend stocks, blue chips, a high index ETFs, high index funds, and then there's another like thematic portfolio that pursues
Mhm.
growth. So you would have, like, I would say, the boring companies that gives you like a high
Yeah.
dividend yield. Let's say you invest like 100K in this, you would
Mhm.
get like a 6% solid, no matter whatever happens in the company. And then you have like the sexy portfolio that gives you good returns, that gives you growth,
Okay.
but doesn't give you any dividends. So this is the riskier portion, but the higher the risk, the higher the reward. And usually, if you can have like 15 to 20% of your portfolio in that portion, and then the rest in that portion, and we're talking here about equities, but I would recommend also adding right now a couple of fixed income funds, especially since interest is at 5.5. So
Mhm.
that's a good rate right now. Before, a fixed income didn't yield anything, so it wasn't even in the people's mind.
Yeah.
So just have a mix of that. And I know people in Saudi love real estate. So if you're an individual investor and you can't buy a piece of land, go through REITs.
Mhm.
REITs is given good income as well. So just having a mixture of all of these assets. People ask me all the time, like, what about gold as a hedging instrument? You can do that, but I personally would love to invest in companies that the value would increase.
Mhm.
Gold is based on risk and geopolitical and whatever. There's something, a war or something, you see the gold value going up. So I don't like that much of, I don't know, worry in my life. I like to keep things simple.
It does. It's funny because I mean, gold in a lot of ways people see it as a safe bet, but it's
Yeah.
actually when you take into account the volatility of it, it's not as safe as a company that's surely but steadily growing.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah. You
I hadn't
can't
thought of it that way.
convince me like you take gold and store it in a place, its value will increase. But a company adds more people, adds more
Yeah,
innovation. So I feel like you can see that.
you can see it
That you
physically.
can't really see it.
Yeah. And I think that leads me sort of to my next question. We're talking about, Saudis love real estate. Um, for people in Saudi specifically, and we can talk nationals and we can talk a lot of the expats moving here as well who are making this income here. What are the investment opportunities available in Saudi that are perhaps unique to Saudi that you wouldn't typically see in other places? And likewise, what are some of the opportunities you can see in other countries that we don't really have here that you would like to see here?
Hmm. Well, Saudi is very developed. I would say that, and the market is very developed. Like, you can
Mm-hmm.
instantly trade, and by your phone, by any app, you can trade, and the information is really widely accessible for everything. So that's the thing that I really like about Saudi's market right now, and I think anyone can take advantage of that. Like, there's no difference between us and the U.S. The difference between the US is there's more liquidity, but I feel with Saudi this is getting much more better right now, with considering all the recent IPOs in the market.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I feel Saudi is very much mature in its way as well. There's nothing that I would say we're lacking. I think we're on the right path to become like the third biggest stock exchange in the world.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And when we talk about Saudi, we also have to talk about, as two Saudi women, I think, the financial empowerment of women, right? So we've made incredible progress in the last couple of years, but women are still behind men in terms of the rates of women actively investing in the stock market, or in investment in general. And why do you think that is, and how can we fix that?
Well, I'll tell you a story. I have a friend of mine who's really successful and super smart. And she came to me, she told me, I have 1 million riyals in my saving accounts and I don't know what to do with it. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, you don't know what to do with it? And she's super smart, master's degrees and everything. She's like, yeah, I'm always afraid of investing. I don't want to get into it. It's just too dramatic. And I was like, why? It's very simple. So I would say this to every woman who's listening to me right now. It's very simple. You can do it yourself.
If a man can do it.
If a man can do it, you can do it. I feel with us women, and don't hate me for saying that, we lack sometimes the confidence in ourselves. We think it's a man's job. It's not a man's job. It's a woman's job, because women are more risk averse than men. Men can like throw away all the funds and like, I believe in this. This is a good hunch. This is a good company. No. I'm like, I need to see it. I need to see it in order to pursue. So I would recommend for women to start very small, and obviously get the right advice, like get the right professional. You can ask any broker, any investment expert, what do you recommend? Let's say I have 1 million riyal. What do you recommend? I want a stable income without me having to do anything. I want to protect my wealth. I don't want it to decrease more than 5%. Measure your risk tolerance and start building and start actually seeing returns from your money. Having money is one thing. Knowing what to do with your money, that's another level of power that I feel like every woman should have. It just gives you options, just give you freedom, and not have to be dependent on anyone else other than yourself, basically.
100%. And do you think that's a stable source of income on its own? So when we look at, the US stock market is at one of their all-time highs now this year, but the past 2 years, the performance hasn't been great. So in that sort of situation, are you supposed to sort of write it out, believe in it? How do you, de-risk yourself?
I get worried when everything is going very well. When the market is all at time highs, that's when I worry. That's when I'm thinking there's something going to happen. Is it time to pull out? Is it time to reduce exposure? When everything is red, you know what's going to happen. The damage is already there. So you might as well write it out. If you really believe in if you really believe in the company that you hold. It doesn't matter what happened in the market. If the market closes the second day, it doesn't matter. You believe in that company, it will get better. And I'll give you an example of that. General Motors. General Motors got crushed and hammered. And yesterday I saw it was all-time high as well. 50 all-time high this year. So this is just an example. And I've held this stock for the past 2 years at a loss. And yesterday seeing that, and I was like, I believe in this company. It's a good company. They're always going to be producing cars. There's nothing going to happen to that. So this is just an example of, if you did your homework about that company, just write it out. But sometimes the market, yes, like COVID, it was all red everywhere. But you just need to measure the effect. Is it something within the company, something worldwide? Worldwide, it's going to affect everything.
Yeah.
So definitely take a pause before doing any decision, and don't act on pure panic. I would say that.
And talking about the market, let's talk about the Saudi market specifically. So it's been really interesting to see the evolution of the Saudi stock exchange, right? Over the past 10 years, we've had, less than 10 IPOs per year, and a lot of them were driven by large-scale government companies going public rather. So you have Aramco, you have Saudi National Bank. But in the past 3 years, you've seen more than 30 IPOs per year. And this is driven primarily by perhaps mid-cap, a bit smaller private companies. What do you think is driving this change, and how do you see the market evolving?
Well, what's driving this change primarily is Saudi vision. By us not having to depend on oil as the main source of revenue, we have to expand our economy, and we have to list more companies, because you're talking about 50% of the companies in Saudi are not listed. The level of companies we have in the Saudi market is less than 300. That's nothing. If you talk about the US market and just compare that, obviously you really can't compare that, because that's a very old market. We're still developing, but we have every source in in our country, basically, with the companies to become bigger as well. I believe that. For I would say Saudi vision is number one, the main source, main driver that to basically expand the economy, to have different sources of income coming to the economy, just depending on oil. As well, the certain reforms and changes that happen in the regulatory framework by CMA, easing ownership for foreign ownership, changing the companies law, made it very easier for companies to list their companies. There's a very straight, clear path to list a company. It's not that complicated as before. Last I heard, it takes about 30 to 60 days once you apply to CMA. So it's a very quick and easy process. So I think it's the government making it much more easier, the regulatory authority making it much more easier, and there's this huge positive sentiment from the companies itself. I saw there in a report that the average return in Q2 from Saudi's IPO was 43%.
Wow.
You cannot beat that. You cannot get that anywhere else in the world. If you look at the New York Stock Exchange, their IPO market have been flat the past 2 years. So Saudi is where all the action has happened. We have a huge, major foreign influx of investors coming because they can't get that returns anywhere else.
I'm kicking myself for not being in the Saudi Stock
No, you
Exchange
can
right
get
now.
into it. You can get into it. As well, that helped change, not, I would say, just Saudi's economy, but the whole region's economy, because Saudi is the biggest player. And Saudi alone, just Q2, counted for 61% of all IPOs in the region. So by us trying to list as much as possible companies that we have, it influenced UAE to list their companies as well. So you see the whole region changing and starting to list as much as companies that they have. And we have really good companies. Most of our companies are family owned, long history companies that needs to be in the market. People were just afraid of like listing. Why would I need to list if I have the capital? Well, there's other reasons for you to list. So I feel now the investors are not afraid. It's very transparent. The legal and regulatory framework is very clear, very helpful. So this is driving the whole, I would say, revolutionary IPO in the Saudi market.
No, that's really cool to understand. I would also like to dig deeper into the point around, all of these family companies and offices going public, right? Because as you mentioned, they don't really have the need for capital.
Yeah.
So what's driving them specifically to go public now? What benefits are they getting from that?
Well, I know a company, but I can't say the name, but they went public because they were third generation and they wanted to make sure that this company would survive in the long term. They didn't want to have, they don't have any family dispute, but they wanted to avoid that. And it's been doing great. The company doubled in value. So if I was an owner, I would be really happy if suddenly I'm doubled my net worth. So this is one of the main reasons for the company to survive in the long term for generations to come. And as well, you get more access to resources, access to funding. When you're a company listed into the Tadawul Stock Exchange, you're in the game. But when you're not listed, who knows about you? Who knows about you? You gotta be big. And honestly, this is the time for you to go big or go home. You can't be just like in the corner. But when I go, let's say I'm a company and I go to a bank and I'm trying to get a loan of by 50 million. When I say I'm listed, whether in Numu, the parallel market, or the main market, that makes a difference. I'll get easier access to financing, 100%. So there's other reasons, I would say, than just liquidity or just there was reason for sustainability. There's reason as well to diversify our country. What is a country? It's a group of companies. So if you want to make our country bigger, you need to list. And if we want to reach the third biggest, according to what Crown Prince said, we want to be the third stock exchange. So we have to list as much as company as we can.
That's another interesting point you hit on was the sort of the landscape of the market, right? So you have Tadawul, you have Numu. For people who aren't as familiar with what that looks like, can you sort of describe what each one functions as?
Okay, so Tadawul is the main market, which is usually bigger companies. I think they need to have a market cap over 500 million or 1 billion, something between the range of that. The parallel market Numu, which is for smaller companies, I think the cap is 200 million and less. and they need to have financial records, I think 3 years. For I think the main market, 5 years or more when you want to list. So there's a different in valuation. So basically, bigger companies go list in Tadawul, smaller companies list in Numu. The level of liquidity is much more higher in Tadawul than the level of liquidity in Numu, because you can't access Numu as an individual investor unless you have incredible investment knowledge or have more than 1 to 5 million in your bank account. So not all individuals have that. So you wouldn't be able to sell very easy your shares in Numu as much easier you would be able to sell it in Tadawul.
And we're talking large scale companies, we're talking mid scale companies, and then obviously the very, very tiny startup ecosystem as well, right? And you have a couple of those that are slowly reaching scale now, moving from seed to Series A, Series B. Do you ever advise people to look into investing in those? Is that too volatile for a beginner?
Private equity?
Venture capital.
Venture capital. Well, yeah, it just depends on your risk tolerance. Like, are you willing to lose it? God forbid. No? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Then don't go through it. It just depends on your risk tolerance. But for me, I would love it, because if I study it, I believe in the company, I would go for it. But it just depends on what you want. And you really need to have all your information before investing. That's the thing I would say. But venture capital is growing, and it's huge. And I think there's a lot of opportunities to go to go through that.
And private equity, since you mentioned it as well, it's becoming a bit more international even within the Saudi scene, right? You have a lot of large private equity firms moving into the region, working with the different family offices and other companies. How has that scene evolved? Where do you see opportunity there?
Yeah, I think that scene is growing and evolving in a dramatic pace. I know we have SBC, a lot of other companies that just can't keep up with the level of demand, because we have a lot of great entrepreneurs, but no one ever before noticed that, and no one kept giving funding to them. And now all of this is changing. So I think there's more room to grow, and there's more room for people to come to that board and actually invest in these companies, because I'll give you an example. Florad, I think, a couple of other companies, Talabat, a couple of other companies that are going through the IPO process now, that started as venture capital and private equity within the period of 5 years. So definitely more room to grow.
And you yourself are in the process of an IPO right now, right? So could you talk to us about how you came to that decision, what that process has been like for you?
Well, we plan to list hopefully 2025.
Inshallah.
Well, we would like our company to be here for 1,000 years to more. And we would like our company to be innovative and in the game, basically. So that's why we want to list. We don't want to be growing and expanding without sharing this level of resources, without sharing this level of knowledge with the world. And this is why we're literally opening our doors and telling people we want you to be part of our success. And that is the main reason that we are listing. And the process is really easy. Shockingly. It just takes a lot before you go through the application. So it just takes, like, a lot of people wait till they have the right statements. Like, I don't want to list when my profit is at 200 million. I want to list when my profit is at 500 million. That will give me a higher valuation. So it's just like having all your ducks in a row, have your financial records ready, your legal framework ready. And then once you go through the actually giving your papers to CMA, that process is very quick. So I would recommend everyone who's afraid of doing it, do it.
Okay, so you wouldn't say that there were significant challenges along the way of trying to go public, whether internal or from external?
No, I would just say you need to find the right advisor that will help you to go through that. And for our case, we are outsourcing or insourcing wealth management, but like, it would just need to find the right advisor that will take you to market that you feel comfortable with, basically, and understand you and value your company in a way that you would like to be portrayed.
Okay. And in terms of the types of sectors that we're seeing a lot of IPO growth from, so the financial sector is obviously one. It seems like consumer is one. Are there specific sectors where you're seeing growth, and potentially why those are the ones that are growing the fastest here?
Yeah, we have the technology sector, the hot sector. We have the healthcare sector. We have, I think, the energy renewables, but the technology has been the most outperforming sector. The healthcare sector raised, I think, over 700 to 1 billion this year by Suleiman Al Faqih. We have Al Musa company coming as well in the IPO. So there's a lot of, and I know there's another hospital chain coming in the market 2025 beginning. So there's a lot of hospitals that are going to come in the market basically. So before we just have Suleiman Al Habib, we have Suleiman Faqih, and then we're going to have another four. So that sector have a huge influx of capital coming ahead. The technology sector as well, because you're seeing traditional businesses failing and being replaced by technological sectors. And I think this company came in the market this year, June. I can't remember the name. And no one believed in it. And I remember talking to my brothers, and my brothers were like, no, we don't want to get in this IPO. No one would go for it. And I was like, no, it's going to do really well. And they couldn't believe it. I can't remember the name. Was it Rasan, or I think Rasan? Rasan, yeah. And did huge.
Okay.
It was like, I think if the name is wrong, then correct me, please. But this company just did use technology basically to do insurance for your vehicle within a second. So you don't have to go through the normal chain of insuring your vehicle. And it doubled in the market. And because it's a pioneer, it's a market leader, no one expected that. They were like, why would you go through this app thing? And it actually did amazing.
That's incredible. No, I mean, it seems like obviously there are these things that in hindsight make a lot of sense, but do you think, in the moment, if there's a technology that you're like, oh, this hasn't been done before, I think we should get behind this, does that approach make sense a lot of the time?
Yeah, obviously. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just need to know how to make it better and just do it. And a lot of things that are being done by, let's say, the Western world, you can just apply it here in a different way, in a different format, in a Saudi version, and make it better. And that will still work. So definitely, whatever you can make it your own, customize it a bit, will definitely be amazing.
And when we think about the benefits to the economy of this IPO, so we've talked about, why it benefits a company to go public.
Yeah.
Why does it benefit, the economy at large, and me as an individual? Why should I care about these companies going public?
You should care because that will create more jobs. That will create more capital. The raising of capital will influx the economy hugely. Like when Aramco raised 29 billion, where did that money went through? It went through the economy. That's a huge amount to be deployed to the economy, and to see you saw differences in the way the spending of the whole Saudi had happened. As well, that makes the market mature when all of these companies list and the market becomes more mature, more transparent, and you have other options. When I'm telling you buy a healthcare company, if you have one, then you're just forced to buy one. When you have five, that matures the whole sector, and there's competition, and with more competition, each company has to perform well and make sure that the PE is relatively at a good discount, not very high, not overvalued. So it just creates a more developed country overall, and it's a developed country. It's a better place to live basically for an individual.
Right. And to have a thriving private sector obviously is the goal, and to create that healthy sort of competition so that we end up getting better services from these companies.
Exactly.
What are you most excited about then in terms of the future economic outlook of Saudi?
Well, I would really like to be a driver or force to help basically get my country, Tadawul, to third place in the world. I would really like to see that. I would really like to help as much as possible companies to list, because there's huge untapped potential that I see every day. I think that will be a great game changer. We're having a lot of new developments by having options open. We're having dual listings. So there's a lot of new exciting changes in the Saudi market that I think is becoming more fresh and more appealing to foreign investors. We have, I think, 15% the level of foreign investors right now in the market, which is amazing, which represents more liquidity, which represents more options, more freedom for the normal individual investor. Basically, if they want to sell their share in a minute, they can sell it, nothing to be worried about. So I'm really excited with all of these new advancements, I would say.
Is it purely a numbers game to become the third largest stock exchange in the world, or is there more to it than just having the the third most companies listed, essentially?
I think it's a bit of both.
Mhm.
You need the public, you need the government, you need the numbers, you need everything basically to reach to that, because you need a mature market, a developed market, an educated investor as well, not an investor that would panic as well, not an investor that would act basically without any reasoning. So I think it's a combination of both of
Okay.
everything.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I learned a lot from this
I hope
conversation.
so.
And I hope it was fun for you as
Oh,
well.
really
So
fun. Thank you so much.
thank
Thank you
you.
for
Thank
having
you.
me. Take care.